listening to The Mark Cox Show. Follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/The Mark Cox Show.
We want to have him go through an elegant process as opposed to a demeaning process. Because they're very demeaning on the other side, and they want to make you look as bad as possible. And of course, the press can be very demeaning too. But I'm sure the press would be very dignified in this case. But I really want—that's the word. I really think he's a very dignified man. I'd like to see him go through a dignified process. I think he deserves that.
Yeah, I don't think that's what Eleanor Schmiel has in mind, or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, any of the rest of them. Welcome back. By the way, today the president called on the Senate to invoke the nuclear option if necessary, basically encouraged them to do it. So I'm sure that'll make headlines here in a little while. Right now, let me welcome in Missouri's Attorney General, Josh Hawley. Boy, sounds good to say that. Mr. Attorney General, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being able to respond on such short notice. When I heard the connection to the Hobby Lobby case and Judge Gorsuch, I immediately thought of you. What was your reaction last night?
Delight. I think that this is a great choice for the country. Judge Gorsuch is the consummate judge. I mean, this is a true professional. He's fair. He's exceptionally well qualified and impressive. And, actually, there's another connection besides the Hobby Lobby case, Mark, and that is I actually was working at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals the first year that Judge Gorsuch was on the bench. And so I've seen Judge Gorsuch operate up close and personal. I've watched him on the bench itself. I've seen him in numerous different cases. I've seen his opinions, seen him in draft form, seen him in final form. And this is a guy who is a true pro. He's going to be a great justice.
So let me have you kind of remind people about the Hobby Lobby case and the religious liberty question that was at stake there.
Well, the Hobby Lobby case was all about whether or not David and Barbara Green, who are the couple who started Hobby Lobby in the back of their garage back in the 1970s in Oklahoma City, whether or not that their company, whether they could follow their sincere religious beliefs regarding abortion, and whether they could do that as part of their business. Or, in other words, is it true that if you start a business in this country, which is what the Obama administration argued, you give up your First Amendment rights, your religious liberty rights? And Judge Gorsuch was one of a number of judges on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals who ruled in favor of David and Barbara and in favor of Hobby Lobby. And they said, look, our tradition in this country has always been that you don't give up your rights to religious liberty or anything else when you start a business, and you are welcome to follow your peaceful, sincere religious beliefs so long as they don't hurt other people. It's a landmark decision. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed with us in Hobby Lobby. I was privileged to be one of their attorneys at the U.S. Supreme Court, and also agreed with Judge Gorsuch, who would rule on this case in the 10th Circuit.
Yeah, he has drawn a lot of heat for that already, and I believe it was Nancy Pelosi I listened to last night, but they all started to sound the same with their talking points after a while, claiming that he tries to argue that corporations are people, and they don't believe that corporations should be able to have opinions like that. But people are behind corporations, right?
Well, the whole point of that case is that you don't give up your rights when you start a business. So it can't possibly be, Mark, for, let's say, the kosher butcher, someone whose business, the very essence of his business is keeping kosher in line with his religious faith. It can't possibly be that just because he starts a business that now all of a sudden he can't be forced to keep kosher anymore, and in his day-to-day work he has to violate his faith. I mean, that's ridiculous. And that's why our laws, federal law, we have similar laws here in Missouri. These laws protect people in the practice of their business, again, so long as they follow their faith peacefully and sincerely, don't hurt others. And that's what the Hobby Lobby case stands for. That's what Judge Gorsuch wrote, and that's one of the reasons that he's going to be a great justice, I think. I'm really excited about this pick.
We're talking with Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley. The issue here I argued earlier that, for me, the biggest issue in the election for president was the Supreme Court. Everything else is secondary. I hope he accomplishes a lot of the things he's talked about, including immigration reform. But I don't think there was a bigger issue in this election, because think of where we'd be today had Hillary Clinton won.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I just think about my own work in the Attorney General's office. I've been in office now, Mark, just at 3 weeks. We have filed already filed or joined or supported, I think it's coming up on 5 different suits against the federal government challenging Obama regulations that go beyond the authority of the federal government and that take over private property, that take over farmland, that would shut down energy production, drive up our energy costs. I mean, we could go through the different cases. It's unbelievable. And I said that if I were elected Attorney General, I would stand up for Missourians and Missouri workers, Missouri farmers and families against an out-of-control, dysfunctional Washington bureaucracy. And that's exactly what I've been doing. And the great news is that we now have an administration, I think, who will agree with us as we bring these challenges and say, yeah, these are ridiculous. These laws, these regulations, rather, aren't authorized by law. They hurt the people of Missouri and others around the country. Let's get rid of them. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for us in our state. It's an exciting time for the country. And again, I think Judge Gorsuch, hopefully soon to be Justice Gorsuch, is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Did you ever get to work with Scott Pruitt from Oklahoma?
You know, I got to know Scott some during, I've known him over the years and followed very closely his work as Oklahoma Attorney General, which has been exemplary. And I got to work with him just a little bit before President Trump named him as as his nominee for the EPA. I just can't say enough about Scott Pruitt, who's been a leader among attorneys general, a leader standing up to out-of-control bureaucracies. I think he's going to do a heck of a job.
Well, you mentioned regulation. I would think that as an attorney general having to challenge these piles and piles of regulations that have been added in recent years, they're on the right track already by reducing some of those regulations. But, you know, once Scott Pruitt's on the job, your effort to fight some of these environmental issues that are like, as you mentioned, attacking our ability to create affordable energy, maybe some of that goes away.
I hope so. I really hope so, and I expect it will. And you know, part of what we're trying to do, our strategy here, is as we challenge these Obama-era regulations, many of them, as you know, Mark, imposed at the last minute. I mean, I filed suit against regulations that affect energy production in the state of Missouri and around the country. Obama timed these regulations to go into effect January 19th, the day before the inauguration. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I hope that by bringing these challenges, we give the new Trump administration an opportunity to say, you know what? Yes, let's get rid of these regulations and let's do it now, because it can be a slow process, Mark. I mean, withdrawing these regulations, there are procedures you have to go through. It takes a lot of time, but we hope to prime the pump here and to get that relief as soon as we can for Missouri's workers and Missouri's families and farmers. And I think we've made a good start.
Josh Hawley, would you mind giving me your opinion real quick on Jeff Sessions and his fight to be Attorney General?
Well, you know, I think that Senator Sessions has a long record of distinguished service, and I think he'd make a great Attorney General. I mean, I really do. He was an Attorney General of a state himself, so he's already done that job on a smaller scale, and he's had very distinguished service, rendered very distinguished service in the United States Senate. You know, I think that he is a fine choice. He's supported by a large majority of his colleagues, and, you know, enjoys also, I think, bipartisan support from across the spectrum. So I hope that the Senate will move quickly and that he will, you know, I think he'll be a great AG.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, glad to get an update on what you're working on down there, and thanks for your opinion on the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. Good to be with you.
Have a great day. Thank you. That is Joshua Hawley, our new Attorney General. 3 weeks on the job, has already filed lawsuits to try to roll back some of these Obama regulations. That's great news. As he mentioned, worked on the same circuit court there when Neil Gorsuch first got appointed a few years back, and you know, obviously knows of him personally and thinks the world of him, thinks he's going to be a great justice. I was glad to get his input on that. Think of the difference when you have somebody who's going to replace Scalia, who is that person has to be of a like mind, of somebody who's an originalist. That's what the left is worried about. That's what Eleanor Schmiel, if you listen to that bite, her biggest concern near the end is that these people are originalists. They look at what our founders wrote, and they hold up the lawsuit or the legislation, the law that's being challenged, and they try to decide was that the intent of the founders, or does it mesh with our Constitution? And he's one of the people willing to stand up and say, No, this is not what they meant. We can't try to think about how they would have written this if they were alive today. This is what they wrote. It was put there for a reason. This makes sense. That's what you need, is somebody who interprets and not tries to write legislation from the bench. I just can't wait to see him get sworn into office. Have I mentioned that?